Hi, and welcome to another episode of Can't Stop the Growth. I'm Chad Peterman, and today we are going to look back at a recording from one of our Future Leaders series meetings here at Peterman Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, where I talk specifically about habits, how to create them, and ultimately how our habits shape our identity. Kind of a weird concept to think about. Most people think of habits as, something bad, whether that be not exercising enough or eating too much or eating the wrong foods. And really this gets into how your essential identity is shaped by the habits that you create and how it contributes to the actual habits that you ultimately end up forming. So without further ado, we'll jump right into the audio. Hope you enjoy.
This was kind of a cool one for me. I had randomly come across a podcast last week from a guy who was talking about this subject, and so kind of listened to it, and upon listening to it, kind of discovered some things about myself that kind of put some things in perspective. So excited to talk about that topic. The podcast was by a guy named James Clear, and he is the author of the book that I started reading once I heard it, called Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. So he had a sample chapter on his website, and he also writes a ton of articles. I think it's just jamesclear.com is where you can find him. But I've talked prior on a couple of things about habits, about habit goals versus outcome goals, different things of that nature. The one thing that James points out that I've never really thought about when it comes to goal setting and how habits, obviously we can probably quickly identify good and bad habits in our lives and how those relate to achieving goals. But what he points out is how habits are a means of creating our identity. And this got me thinking about, some of the things that I do and why do I actually do these things? Why do I do them a specific way? I am a very habit, routine-driven person, for good or bad. But it got me thinking, okay, if my habits are ultimately what define my identity, then who is it that I want to be? What are the habits that reinforce this person that I want to be, that I want to become? What are those things? And so I started thinking, obviously because it was very early in the morning, that habit came to mind is why, my wife always teases me, you don't get up in the morning, you get up in the middle of the night. Which, okay, a fair point. But I kind of started thinking about why do I do that? And one of the things that I kind of lean back on is that in all the studying that I've done and leaders and high performance people, they've always said the earliest I've ever heard someone is 4 a.m. Is when they get up. And so I said, well, I want to do the things that they do. So I guess that would be a good start. That's pretty simple, pretty easy. I can get up early, and so it really got me thinking about the fact that habit, getting up early, to read. I do a bunch of things in the morning, but that habit was more so a means of my identity, of who I wanted to become, of who I was working towards. And then I started viewing kind of all the other things that I do in that same light. Waking up early, I'm a big believer in breakfast, and I kind of look at that as a means to fuel my body and my brain, how I'm going to make it through the day. And then working out. So that's always been a part of me that's been ingrained, that I've just always done. It's not difficult for me to go work. It's just like part of my life. But I look back and why do I have that habit? Well, I've always associated myself with being athletic, and that was something I wanted to be. I've played sports from the time I was 5 till I was 22. So that was always a piece of my identity. Well, going along with that, comes working out. And then, the habit of journaling, which I've been doing for about a year, and where that puts me in life. Well, my big goal, my big mission is to serve others, to help others. And so journaling, as I kind of looked back on what I put in those, really puts me in a place of service, of how do I help others. As I've said before, I write 2 in the morning. I write 1 to my daughter, and then 1 for myself. And so some of the stuff that I put in my daughter's is obviously stuff that I hope she'll one day read, and hopefully that will help her along her journey as well. But I think the important thing to hopefully that you pull out of this is that, while I use the example of waking up early and it's a habit, I don't really know how that makes me better. But it's one of those things that I know that if I consistently do that every day, like I didn't have, like when I woke up this morning and did my routine, I didn't have any sort of like huge breakthrough. But I do know that over the course of the time that I've been doing that, a lot of really good things have happened. And a lot of things that through reading during that time, or just thinking, I've came up with a lot of good stuff. And so there again, it's not every day, which I think is why we struggle so much with habits, is that there is no big result each and every day. It's boring to a certain extent because it's just a slow, methodical race that you're going down, but ultimately it's shaping who you are as a person. A lot of us, when we set goals, we set what are referred to as outcome goals. I want to do this by this period of time. Well, if we think about it, a outcome goal is very momentary. It happens, you may enjoy it for a second, and then it's over. Whereas habit goals are a daily thing. I often look, when looking at habits, one of my favorite things to do is to watch, with my background in athletics, is to watch the very best athletes in the world. I don't have like favorite teams. I just have people that I watch. And I think, thinking like why I do that or why I enjoy that so much is because thinking about all of the work that they have put in to get to that level. My wife could probably tell a really embarrassing story. When the Masters was on this year and Tiger was on the last day, I literally didn't speak for like 3.5 hours, just watching him and what he was doing, and to be where he was and then where he was at that point in time. I get chills thinking about it now because of his ability to embrace habit. The guy he practices more than anybody, and that's how he got to where he got. Same thing with like LeBron James. Love watching him play. I feel like a little kid sometimes because I just watch him wherever he play. I don't care what team it is. I don't care what it is. But just to watch someone that is at that level in their particular craft is pretty inspiring. And I think it all relates back to, and if you hear those guys talk, it's all about routine. It's all about habit. It's all about what they do day in and day out, which ultimately shapes their identity as what they are. The big thing that I think is I think habits kind of, oftentimes we think about the negative habit that we have, and how that affects our life and how we want to stop that. And I think it's easy to get sidetracked. I spoke just a second ago about, kind of the term, the monotony of success. And the one thing I've always read is success is a very kind of boring state, because you have to, in order to achieve success, you have to fall in love with the ride. You've got to fall in love with getting a little better each day. and understanding how you can mentally get to that point. If we go to the gym today, we're not going to wake up in the morning and be in great shape. We're going to have to go the day after, and 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 until it becomes a habit, until it becomes part of our identity. The one thing that James points to a lot is instead of what do I need to do, it's who do I need to be in order to accomplish this. For me, that's a powerful statement, and one that I feel like, looking back on some of my habits, that's why I do those particular things. Is that's the person I want to be. I want to be the person that gets up early. Want to be the person that kind of leads the charge. Want to be the person that serves others. So what are those habits that make me that person? One experiment that we did earlier this year, and I know there's a few texts in the room, but I was reading something similar about this particular thing when it came to habit goals versus outcome goals. And we oftentimes run contests and different stuff like that, and we get mixed results. Some people are, they're competitive, so they buy in this, that, and the other. And I said, well, why don't we flip it up here? Why don't we make a contest, and whether it's selling a certain accessory, that's an outcome goal. So while it's cool to have a contest and hopefully that excites some excitement within the group, oftentimes what we found is this didn't work so well. So I said, well, why don't we kind of put this in perspective, and let's create a habit goal for these guys. And the habit goal was give an estimate. Well, we had to, in order to achieve the goal, the guys had to give a certain amount of estimates. Now, an estimate is not necessarily success, but it's the way to get to that successful outcome. And so what we found is that we sold more in those couple of months than we had the prior probably 6 months. And it was as simple as just getting out there and talking about it. So what was that step that would lead to the outcome, as opposed to just all focusing on the outcome, and not everybody has the strategy to get there. And I think that points to the importance of these habits. For me, and when you look at identity and creating the person that you want to be, the most powerful thing about habits is we have absolute control over them. Most outcome goals, you have control, but there again, a habit, you have absolute control. Am I going to do this today? Or in some cases, am I not going to do this today? The control it's all you. And ultimately, to me, that's the most freeing thing. That's why I am a firm believer in that you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to, so long as your habits are front and center. And you develop those habits, you understand who it is, what that person looks like that is going to achieve that goal. Not so much what do I need to do, what would the person that would achieve this goal, what do they look like? What would they do? And that relates back to my goal of wanting to be a great leader. Well, a great leader more than likely isn't going to be. They're going to get up early. They're going to look presentable. They're going to be put together. All of these things that I have in my mind of that's what that person looks like. That's how that person would act. Serving others, that wasn't always a priority of mine. But what I realized was that is what great leaders do, is they serve others. And so it became part of my identity and continues to be part of my identity. Thus why we're sitting here today, because I want to give you any information that I come across that I think can help. I learned a while back that you can read all the books and learn all the stuff that you want, but if you don't share it with anybody, it's fairly useless to a certain degree. So that is why you see me encourage, all of our guys who have been doing this a while to teach someone younger. Because you may be the best installer, service tech, plumber in the world, but if you don't share that knowledge with anybody, what good is it for? Ultimately, there will come a time when all of our time here on earth ends. How did we leave the world a better place? How did we have an impact on somebody that ultimately rippled down the line? And I think that's the important part, is our identity is forever. Even after we're gone, people will remember us as, oh, they were that kind of person. Oh, they were this. And I think you hear so many times people unfortunately selling themselves short because they label themselves as a particular person. The one I hear all the time, which I think is funny, is, well, yep, love to join you, just not really a morning person. What do you mean? I wasn't always a morning person. I mean, I remember in high school, my dad trying to get me out of bed, like, I want to sleep. Everybody wants to sleep. Like, it's comfortable. But is the person that you want to be that person that's not a morning person? Or is the person that you want to be a morning person? Now, for some things, that may not really apply. For other things, it may. But don't pigeonhole yourself into, well, this is my identity. Well, I'm not good at that. Well, I challenge you to really look inside and say, really? I mean, you couldn't change? I mean, like if you wanted to become like for me, like writing, like I was never really a good writer. My wife, wonderful writer. She lets me know about that quite often in my mistakes. But what I realized is that, well, in order to become a better writer, I may want to start writing as opposed to just saying, nope, can't do that. So I write 2 pages every morning. It's not a lot. It's not like I'm really writing down some really great content in there. But what I have noticed is that writing has become easier because I do it every single day. So while I wasn't a writer, I wanted to be a writer. And I think that's the powerful thing about linking who you want to become, who you want to be, and your habits. That's what's going to direct it, is what you do on a day in, day out basis. You're not all of a sudden going to become great at something just because of time. We always talk about this in our industry. Get guys come in, yep, been a tech for 20 years. Yep, been plumbing for 30 years. Okay, well, have you just been doing it, or have you gotten better over 30 years? Have you gotten better over 20 years? If you have, then we've got something to talk about. But if you haven't, which we've all met those people, then unfortunately, your experience is not worth much. So how do we make that experience worth something? You make it worth something by creating the right habits, by continuing to get better, by becoming that person that your habits say you are. There again, back to you can do really whatever you want to do. Find out what that person that would do that looks like. What is that identity that you need to grab? What are those things that you need to do to become that person? James talks about in here, and he goes into a lot more depth than I'll go into here, but it's all about, he says, the key to any habit creation is just focusing on getting that 1% better each day. So, as we set big goals and, shoot for the stars and do all of those great things, like I pointed to earlier, you're not going to do that like tomorrow. None of us are going to get in great shape tomorrow. None of us are going to become a great writer or a great speaker all in one day. So some people, and it's very gracious of them to say, oh, you're a great speaker. I took a class in college, a speaking class that says otherwise. However, my grade reflected that as well. But what I can tell you is that speaking helps. You've got to get up there and do it. I spoke earlier at a conference earlier this year, and I kid you not, I was like, talking at the company meetings, one thing, but there's a couple thousand people here, like this is a whole other. I mean, I literally almost got physically ill standing back there. I was like, holy God, like I've never felt like this before. Like I've been nervous, but dang, this is a whole new level. But what I've learned is that continuing to do it, you continue to get better. It's like practice, but it has to become a habit, or else your practice is somewhat, not worth anything. But yeah, that 1% better. So one thing that I often do, the journaling in the morning. So seems very simple, but I can tell you, and you can make fun of me later, but what I do when I finish each one, I say to myself in my head, that was a win. And then when I finish the second one, that was a win. To me, it's about stacking those small wins on top of each other, which is ultimately going to put you over that wall that you're looking to get over. There again, very simple. I mean, writing a couple of pages, but I look at that as a win. When I make breakfast and eat and feel good and finish the dishes and all that stuff, that's a win. Like I'm heading down the right path. And when you kind of set yourself up for success, it's amazing what momentum can do. And I've talked about that before, is really getting your morning rolling in the right direction and set yourself up for success. I always laugh when you get guys that want to be great and they want to do good things, and you have them in to talk and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna knock it out of the park, and yet it's the guy who shows up right 10 seconds before the meeting and his shirt's untucked, his boots are untied. He's like, sir, you are not in any place to be great today. And well, I'm not a morning person. Well, I think if we looked inside and you became and really got over that hurdle of your morning person, if you are, if you aren't, and you woke up 30 minutes earlier and you got your stuff together and you laid your clothes out the night before and you're ready to go today, I have a feeling you'd be a whole lot more successful. But there again, those are the little things. Those are the little habits that ultimately compound themselves to really seeing results.